Did you know the IRS just hired more than 50,000 new agents? Most of these agents specialize in collections and are mandated to audit small businesses and increase collections on individuals. IRS notices can be intimidating, but waiting to act could cost you your valuable taxpayer rights. Don't try to handle the IRS alone. These agents are trained to trap you into agreements designed to collect as much money as possible. Don't pay thousands of dollars to a marketing company claiming to be a tax resolution firm. Get behind the shield. The enrolled agents at Elite 8 Tax and Financial Services are experts at tax resolution, protecting taxpayers' rights, and are federally licensed to represent taxpayers before the IRS. Elite 8 Tax and Financial Services has the knowledge, skill, and experience to assist you with audit representation, liens, levies, offers and compromise, innocent spouse relief, wage garnishment, back taxes, and more. Don't lose sleep, time, or your rights as a taxpayer. Make your appointment today at elite8financial.com to schedule a consultation and get the IRS off your back. Get behind the shield.
She cute. Style, comfort, and confidence. Shop with the trend in mind. She cute. Get the latest styles in outerwear, tops, jumpsuits, hats, and accessories. She cute. Shop from the comfort of your own home with confidence and quality products, hassle-free exchange, and free shipping over $65. She cute. Visit us online at shecuteboutique.com to shop our new fall collection.
Welcome to Boss Talk Radio, the #1 online business and entrepreneurial talk show. Brought to you by Elite 8 Tax and Financial Services.
Boss Talk Radio, keeping it real, yeah, that's for sure. I said a Boss Talk Radio, here for your needs, we'll crack the code. He the boss.
He gon' fix your situation like there ain't no time for wasting. We ain't playing when we saying
He the boss.
And if you ever have a problem, he gon' show you how to solve it. Listen in and he'll show you he the boss.
Talk
Here's your host, the Texas tax expert, George Dandridge.
Boss Talk Radio, here for your needs, we'll crack the code. He the boss.
What's good, Boss Talk family? Welcome to another episode of Boss Talk Radio with your host, George Dandridge, the Texas tax expert. I'm going to need y'all to bear with me a little bit because, as you notice, we've been kind of out of pocket for a couple of weeks. It's because it's the meat of tax season, so I'm feeling kind of rusty moving around this thing right now, so y'all going to have to bear with me a little bit. But speaking of being in the midst of tax season, let's give you some housekeeping on your taxes. So I had an interesting textersation the other day, and it made me say, hey, you know what? I need to address this on the show because this may be a common mindset. So I sent one of my clients a text message saying, hey, are we going to need to go ahead and file an extension for you? And the response was, no, I'll have everything in time. It's due by the 18th, right? No, the 18th is my deadline to file for you. I promise you get something to me on the 18th. It might get filed in August. So reach out to your tax professionals if you have not already done so and you know you don't have everything together. Reach out to your tax professionals right now and have them go ahead and file an extension for you. And while we're on the topic of extensions, let me go ahead and tell you that an extension to file is not an extension to pay, and you can still get penalties for late payment. So if you feel like you may owe something or whatever, kind of estimate that thing out and send that payment in time as to not have any unnecessary penalties. So outside of that, you know the rules. Go ahead, get your pen, get your paper, or whatever it is you keep your notes on, because our guest today is going to drop a bunch of knowledge on you guys. And I don't know if you got to read at the top of the hour. It's like, you know, I was thinking about her and I was like, man, you're only limited to what your mind allows you to do, because if you're being honest with yourself, every time you say, well, I can't do this because, it's really that you're putting the excuse before the objective, and when you ask yourself, what's the objective? The thing is that it presents so many ways to get to that end game. And then it's just a question of, if we're being honest, how bad do you want it? How bad are you, how much are you willing to go in? A lot of times people focus on what they do not have. And it's very easy to come up with if you want to call it a reason, we'll call it that. It's very easy to come up with that versus coming up with a game plan and using resources and relationships. I'm one of those people that believe no meeting is by chance. Anyone you come across, anyone that enters your path, whether it's for a season or a reason, a lesson or a blessing, they're there for a reason. And you just got to figure that thing out and make the most of it. And somebody posted earlier today, I forgot who that was, but they mentioned that, that was Terry Simmons, past guest. He mentioned that, you can't feel a kind of way about the people that's there for a season, because once they fulfill that purpose, in your life, then that's all they were really there for, or what have you. So be conscious of your hello. Stranger being a stranger stops at hello, and be intentional about your relationships, whether that's one of mutual benefit or if that's one that's designed to last and stretch out or whatever. Just be intentional about what you intend to get out of that thing. So we're going to pay some bills real quick, and we'll be right back after this.
From exotic luxury vacations to dream weddings, theme parties to family reunion cruises, corporate travel to corporate team building events, Destinations and Occasions is your premier concierge travel and event planner. Take the stress out of planning and arranging your events and travel. Call us today at 510-459-7732 or visit us on the web at destinationsandoccasions.com. Destinations and Occasions. Details is what we do. Life insurance, the most affordable, risk-free, wealth-building tool in history. Advances in life insurance allow you to plan for college, retirement, invest it, unexpected living expenses, and has the power to change the outlook of the next generation. Experts say most Americans are underinsured or have outdated policies. Your life policies should be optimized every 5 years or whenever there is a major life event. Call 866-235-4838 or visit us online at elite8financial.com/life insurance to have the experts at Elite 8 Tax and Financial Services provide you a free quote or a free evaluation of your existing coverage. If you won't do it for you, do it for them. Get behind the shield.
This is Dr. Tamia Guest with Rejuvenating Chiropractic.
This is Nara Reed with Modified Nutrition Health Coach.
This is Karen Marcel with June Street Barbershop.
This is Tiffany Marcel with Marcel Luxury Realty, and you're listening to Boss Talk Radio.
Welcome back, and welcome to the show. Our special guest for today, Miss Alisha Pean. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. So people outside don't know, right before the show, we were trying to get on and do a little sound check, and we had some technical difficulties, and Alisha was in the background just flipping through apps and computer like, hey, you get this thing working. And the fact that you can see and hear her now is just another example of her resilience and whatnot, because she didn't make an excuse. She asked what's the objective, and she figured it out, and now she's on Boss Talk Radio. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I just want to point out that it is Fedora Friday.
Hey! I didn't even know, but I'm in accord, so let's get it. So, man, you have, first of all, congratulations on all the moves that you're making.
Thank you.
I watch an absolute joy, the serial entrepreneur. But before anybody thinks that, hey, you kind of just lucked up or used pretty privilege or something like that in the different entrepreneur spaces you in. Let's talk about what your profession is, what you're licensed in, and what you do.
Sure. So, again, thank you definitely for having me and thinking, so highly of me to come on and share with your audience. So professionally, I work in human resources for a company called Siemens Healthineers. And so we are one of the largest med tech companies in the world. And so I do have a bachelor's in psychology, as well as a master's in industrial and organizational psychology.
I think that's the first time I heard that term. And I think that that's what leads to your ability to consult businesses on really developing culture and whatnot.
Yes.
And so we are in a time now where there's probably more, I don't want to abuse the word entrepreneur, but there's more business owners than ever before, but a lot of them are struggling to scale, not necessarily always because of resources, but because they have a challenge building a culture and building a team and whatnot. What are some of the things that you are seeing in the market, and how are you approaching addressing those concerns for business owners?
So I would say one of the biggest concerns for small business owners and large companies are staffing and talent, right? So right now, because of COVID and the recovery and all of that, you either have a very tiny pool of talent or you have people that have such high preferences that you basically have to incentivize them to want to come and work for you. So even if you are a small business and you already had a fight, for some of the best talent, now larger corporations are now struggling with that too. So I would say my approach to help small businesses with that challenge has been to offer other benefits besides, health insurance, those kinds of things, which is where the culture building come in. How are you, training them? What growth goals can you have for them? What training are you giving them? And how can you really help them grow in their career so that they want to stay with you and they believe in your mission, they believe in what you're doing, what you're selling, so that you can have people that are on board.
And you mentioned because I believe that people support a world that they help build.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the challenges that some small business owners tend to have is letting go of the reins to allow creativity from others.
Yes.
But I think that when you can allow for that, it makes your job easier, and
Absolutely.
It puts you in a position to become a true business owner versus being self-employed. Because
right.
A lot of times people are just simply self-employed and they're trying to get to the point of a business, but there's just a lot of ingredients that are missing. So tell us a little bit about the consulting that you provide and how you help them overcome their own leadership development. Because one of the things that I notice is that, somebody says, hey, I bake great cookies, and they decide they want to go into business selling cookies and think that that recipe alone is enough to carry them, and they don't pursue personal development. How are you coaching in that?
Yes. So I would say about 85% of business owners that I work with have a hard time letting go of those reins, right? So the way that I kind of coach them through that is to help them understand how they can buy back their time by having someone come and support them. And so one of the first things that we do as far as physical action is to create a job description, lining out everything that the person that they want to hire will actually do. And then we make a job description for them as the owner, or if they want to change their title to, manager, director, something else like that, then these are now your list of things to do. This is how you will now help the business to grow where you want it to go. And then this is how that person will, support the things that you're doing. So sometimes when you put it like that, or when you put dollar signs behind it, like if you say you can buy back this amount of your time and be able to actually go after business or contracts or, clients versus being, the social media person, the website person, all of those different things, then it makes a little bit more sense to business owners.
Do you find that they have a challenge learning like what the value of those different things are? Because like one of the things I hear all the time, very common in our industry, I hear people say, well, I'll hire an accountant, once I'm kind of profitable and I can really afford it, not realizing that they're probably hemorrhaging a lot of money. That accountant can step in and say, hey, use this data to make better decisions and whatnot. Do you find that people just have a difficult time understanding what a service or a talent is worth in the marketplace?
Yes, I do. And I blame Google because people feel like they can simply Google how to be an HR person, Google how to be an accountant, Google how to be a social media guru. And the fact is that, yes, there is information out there that can give you surface level details, right, about those different things, or maybe even how to get it started. But once you are, in the thick of it, or certain skills are needed, or, even certain certifications may be needed, that's when it gets a little tricky. And that's when you need someone who is actually skilled or experienced in those areas, so that, like you said, you can save yourself those dollars where you may not be able to identify that you can save. Because just because you know some accounting things does not mean that you know where you can save on taxes, or what all you can claim, or what all you should not be claiming. So I think that if people spent more time actually looking into maybe those professions that they need to hire versus trying to do their job, then maybe it would make a little bit more sense. And I understand budgeting,
Right. There's a level of, for lack of a better word, sweat equity that has to happen. And I think that's another thing people struggle with is the win. Like they kind of like playing double dutch, like where do I jump in this thing and get it going? I would have you. But in that same vein, you mentioned the Google thing, and I always crack jokes about Facebook University and YouTube University and everything. But what I'm concerned with is the term expertise. Is that becoming a thing of the past? I heard someone say, if you're doing the same thing for 30 days, for more than 30 days, you're doing it wrong. And I thought, wow, I could not possibly have attained the level of knowledge that I have in 30 days, and I'm constantly learning. And when I'm like, so is mastery, is expertise just becoming a thing of the past? Is it because it seems to be a culture of know a little bit about everything and expect success?
Yes. So I didn't know this was going to be a show about hurting some feelings, but let's
that's what
go ahead and do it.
Keep it real.
Let's go ahead and do it. Okay. So to answer your question, absolutely. I do think that people are overlooking not only the time, but the passion that is behind a lot of people's expertise. And because people have an opinion on whatever the new topic is on a daily basis, now they consider themselves to be, experts in everything, or just because they have an opinion, that somehow gives them knowledge in that space, right? So I think a lot of people lack good deductive reasoning skills, or even if they have really good ones, it's not, if you still are not versed in that area, it still does not carry you well enough to make you a master. I think that's one point. Another point is that you have so many people that are internet gurus because maybe they took a class under someone else who looks like they're doing well. And then they're just spitting out information versus having actually ran through a program, had people take it, done some background and actually know what the outcomes are to be able to say, hey, this is what my program has produced. People are just really concerned about sales, right? They're concerned about sales. They're concerned about being popular, and they're concerned about, who can look like they're doing the best. So I think mastery in, let's say, industries like coaching, social media management, all those kinds of things are very, very smoke and mirror based. Being honest, and there are a good collective of people that actually know the business, actually know, about the standards, the ethics, the training, the certifications, and all of those things that go into being able to, work with people. That's just one example. There's a bunch of industries where people are just flitting about, right? But I do think that mastering things has gotten lost because every 5 minutes there's a new thing to be a part of. And so even sometimes when people ask me about the boutique, I started my business almost 12 years ago. So even though people are seeing the, things that are happening now, that's something I started almost 12 years ago and have been making mistakes, learning along the way, trying things, failing, coming back. So, it's not something that you just kind of roll out of bed and do. I do think people should spend more time actually wanting to know something instead of just being known for something, which I think I saw somebody post that too. I don't know if it was you or someone else.
Say that again for the people in the back. I like that one.
Yeah. Actually know what you're doing instead of wanting to be known for what you're doing.
Wow. And, I think that I don't know when or how that kind of that culture really developed or what have you, but now that you put it like that, it's really a thing. Like, people are way more concerned for being known for what they do than actually knowing what they do. Like what we were talking about earlier, when you're coming in basically having people establish procedures. Like, a lot of these people are running, blind with no standard operating procedures. And so it's almost impossible to hire when you don't even know what the job is going to be like. For real.
And sometimes business owners are taken aback because I tell them I have to get you together before I can get you a staff together, right? So that means that you have to understand what your management style is or will be. What kind of courses do you need to take? Standard of operations, like you mentioned. What do you want your work culture to look like? And then, just having a good base before you bring people in, because if you don't know what you're doing, or if you just have it all in your head, that doesn't communicate to them for them to know what you're doing. And then you're just going to be walking all over each other.
Yeah, definitely. And then there's another credit to be given for, because I wholeheartedly believe that it's okay to fail your way up. I don't know a truly successful person that hasn't failed multiple times along the way. And the only thing that separates them from those who fail permanently is that they fail and get up and, do it again, take it as a lesson and keep it pushing or whatever. But there are some shortcuts to lessons, folks. You don't have to fail at everything. You can buy the talent or you can buy the knowledge, but you're going to pay one way or the other, whether you lose time, failing your way through, or you hire the appropriate talent and or pay for the knowledge itself. So YouTube is not going to sustain you.
You know what else I see, George? I see a lot of people celebrating the struggle culture, where it's like they like to celebrate or highlight that they got it out the mud, right? And if that's someone's storyline, there's no shade to that. However, like you just said, if you can learn from somebody else's mistakes, why still go through the mistake and say, oh, that was them? It's not going to be me. Now, in some cases, if you're the exception, then that's one thing. But, majority of the time, if someone makes an obvious mistake or something that you can avoid or try to do instead of the other thing, then, just try it that way instead of, like I said, glorifying that you want to say you got it out the mud and that you're still doing it and rocking out by yourself.
Right.
Yeah, it's not effective.
You can, like some people think it's not productive to talk to someone who failed at something. And my thought process is you can learn from everyone. Someone who failed at something, you can learn what not to do from them. So that's a worthy conversation, but I find today that a lot of times when people come and say, hey, I need help with this thing or that thing's like, everybody expects me to know everybody. Like they figure somebody in my network for everything, and it is. But
you're the Rolodex. You're the Rolodex.
But at the same time, it's like sometimes they're putting the cart before the horse. It's like, yeah, you need that, but you're not ready for that yet. You have to do this, and even like in my coaching program, I tell people, coming in, like, what is the objective for you? Because if you're looking for someone to help you master social media, I ain't it. If you're looking for someone to tell you the best, tools and stuff to buy to put into your streams, and that's not what I do. Now, if you want to, improve your cash flow and have audit-proof business and whatnot, let's talk. Let's get it. That's what I do. So, but everybody wants this shortcut, and I use this analogy in one of my speeches, the GPS of success, is that, oftentimes if you take a shortcut all the way, you might get to look like you've done it. But when you get there with people who's actually done it, there's conversations taking place that you don't know anything about because you didn't go through the scenic route. You took the shortcut.
That's right. And you can't go real quick in the corner and Google it either.
Right, because people know what you're doing because you're real surface conversations. So when you get into these in-depth places, you're, for lack of better words, exposed. And I think that some people actually avoid getting into those places so they can be the smartest person in the room, and like, what does that accomplish? So what advice would you give a business owner? Let's say they're 1-2 years in their sales or growing and whatnot, and they're just on that threshold of scaling, and they either don't have the talent pool or they're lacking the capital and network. What advice would you give them to be able to take that deep breath, put it in perspective, and start the scaling process?
Okay. So the advice that I would give, so I'm going to answer your second part first. So as far as not being able to have capital or network to be able to hire people, one of the biggest narratives that I have to help people break is that you can start with interns, right? So when I was in business, I want to say maybe 8 years ago, I was connected to Berkeley College by a friend of mine. And so they were looking for places to place their interns who were in business programs and fashion programs. And so at the time I had a studio, I believe I was in Orange at that time. And, I did need some help. I was making jewelry at that time. So of course I was open to having people come on, on board and help out with that process. So at that time I did not have any human resources, skills or education or anything like that. So I was winging it at that point. However, I was able to leverage interns to help me, with smaller tasks or any administrative work while giving them college credits, right? And so you can also, let's say you have a really small budget, you can do like a stipend, but then that comes down to you building relationships with those individuals, making sure that they are actually passionate in the type of work that you want them to do. Don't just put a body, right? Because then you won't, if you're not paying someone already or paying them very little and then they don't even like what they're doing, then that's a recipe for disaster. So if you are interested in pursuing, interns or having internships be a part of your workforce structure, I definitely would say work with colleges. Right. And a big part of that for the other side of it, for the interns, when they come out of school, jobs are like, well, we need you to have 2 years experience. So you'd be like, well, from where? And so that's where you can connect that gap for yourself and then for that intern so that you both get something out of the deal. So that's one way. The second part, let's say you do have a small budget. You want to try to find someone who has enough of the skills that you need that person can be effective until you have the budget to hire another person, right? So if you need an admin, but you also need a social media person, find someone who has both, or find someone who is so good at one that maybe you can give them a training program to make up for the other one. So me personally, I think that If I have someone who is really good in social media, they're creative, whatever, I wouldn't mind taking the time to train them in some admin work, like Word or, some maybe that, for example, to kind of bridge the gap so that that person can be fitting for that role, right? Until I can move on and get another person or separate it. So that's one. And then the first part, what was the first part of the question? I'm sorry.
I was engaged in that part because I was thinking about this question that you just mentioned.
It was important, but the first part needed to come before that part.
Well, we were talking about basically the financial capital, the human capital, and then how do they position themselves to really just be able to scale? And those were some like really, really great answers.
Yes. So scaling. So a business owner is at the point where they're like, okay, I've taken this as far as I can by myself. What do I do next? So in addition to knowing what your objectives are and where you see it going, let's say your 3 or 5 year plan, you need to understand what your KPIs are so that you know what's working and what's not. So when you get to that point, it's a really good idea to start to look at what doesn't work and maybe drop it off. If it's a product that has not done well, or if it's a product that may do well later once you get to a different, part of your business, drop it off and leave it and come back to it later. Focus on the products or the advertising or the marketing or the customer niche that you found. Focus and hone in on that so that you can continue to grow that, because then that can support maybe some of the other ones that were kind of pulling and drawing, right, from your ability to grow or your cash flow. So I would say putting those things down on paper, knowing what your metrics are, knowing how to measure those things so that you can see what the outcomes are. If I put this much into advertising at this particular place, this is how much I know I'm going to get out on a consistent basis. So that goes back to what we were saying earlier, not being all over the place. You know what I mean? So if you have a consistent process that you do on Instagram that gets you your sales, whatever, then continue to do that. If Pinterest don't work for you, leave Pinterest alone for a little while, right? Or until you can get someone who can run all of those social medias that know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think one of the problems with that approach is that people don't understand their KPIs or how to obtain it. That's, I find, one of the biggest challenges, and people are kind of running off of instinct, but business is that part of business is science. It's not instinctual. It's an actuarial science that you can, compute and get calculated results. But you mentioned something else that I think is very overlooked. And I'm going to try to word this, giving it back to you. You were talking about the interns and whatnot, but more specifically about not having someone do something that's not really what they want to do in or what their strengths are. And as you were talking about that, I thought about the value add and the conversation I had with Terry Simmons a few weeks back. And how often is that overlooked, the employer's value add to the employee, where it's like, okay, neither of us are really an ideal fit, but here's what we can do. Clearly, the employer needs a role filled and certain tasks done, but the question becomes, how are you enriching the employee? What will their connection to you yield them in the next chapter?
Yes. So this is where they usually start to pick up the phone to call an HR person, right? So, of course, all of the different things that are a part of that, there's some recruiter in my blood, right? So people also think that they can go on Indeed, set up an account, put up a description, and get some people. You absolutely can, but you're probably not skilled in how to interview people, what questions to ask them, how to read resumes, how to know how to get through the fluff, how to really, and it's not error-free system, right? Of course you have people that are great, they get in and then they bomb, right? So it's not an error-proof system. However, again, with being able to everything be self-serve, I see a lot of business owners make that mistake. So they go on, they try to find someone themselves, they look good, they sound good, conversation is great, they get in and then the workflow is off, or like I said, the business owner is not prepared themselves to manage. So I see those relationships fall all the time. And again, that's when people are usually ready to bring in an HR person. And so with that, I would say that let's say you're not wanting to use an intern because you need someone who kind of already has experience in the field or whatever. You want a professional, maybe 3 years in, 5 years in. For that, you want to look at their resume and be able to look at their history and see if they actually have the experience and the keywords and all of those things that you need for the job in their resume. If they don't, move on. Don't try to make it fit. Don't try to say, oh, well, that typo was, maybe just a mistake. If you're hiring for an admin, if I'm hiring for an admin, I don't want to see no typos on your resume. I'm not following you.
When we come back, we are going to talk about your team outside of your team, because I think that's one of the things that people struggle with when they think of who their team should be. So we'll be back right after this.
This is Dr. Tamia Guest with Rejuvenating Chiropractic.
This is Nara Reed with Modified Nutrition Health Coach.
This is Kean Marcel with June Street Barbershop.
This is Tiffany Marcel with Marcel Luxury Realty, and you're listening to Boss Talk Radio.
I paid the call to be born.
Have you ever said,
I'll hire an accountant when my business becomes profitable?
are you working with an accountant that's only providing bookkeeping and tax services?
Get behind the shield.
The experts at Elite 8 Tax and Financial Services has a solution. Virtual CFO services can put your business in the black faster and help you make data-driven decisions. Boss Virtual CFO Services offers strategic planning, risk management, reporting analysis, HR financial guidance, tax planning, and much more. Schedule your consultation today at elite8financial.com or give us a call at 866-2-ELITE-8. Elite 8 Tax and Financial Services, what your business needs before it needs it.
DP Gigs, dpgigs.com, where minority small business services reside. You may be wondering, what is DP Gigs? Well, DP Gigs is the new marketplace where you can find a variety of services from minority small business owners online, with services such as accounting, tax prep, business coaching, virtual assistant, event planning, voiceovers, web design, and so many others. Check for yourself. Visit the website, dpgigs.com. That's dpgigs.com. Now, by using the variety of minority small business services at DP Gigs, you will help keep dollars in black and brown communities across the United States. It's easy to get started. Visit the website and search the fantastic minority small businesses that can perform the services you need at dpgigs.com. And yes, they get the job done. Check out the website, dpgigs.com, where minority small business services reside.
Knowledge, integrity, security, service. Get behind the shield.
Hey, yo, we are back with serial entrepreneur, HR guru, Alisha Pean. And before the break, we were talking about some of the different things that you guys can do to help recruit human capital to scale your business, and how you can examine your own philosophies to be able to be a value add to someone in the job market. And now I want to talk about your team outside of your team. And these are your service providers that basically keep your business running. This is going to be your banking relationship, your attorneys, your accountants, your HR personnel, until you are of a size where you have an on-staff HR manager or an on-staff accounting team. In the growth of that, there are people that are doing these things via contract that can be very, very beneficial to you and save you a ton of money. These particular professions typically pay for themselves by the money that they save you. So let's go back to Alisha. Let's talk about the win, because I think by the time you need to hire someone, you're already way past the point that you needed to have an HR consultation, especially in this market.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the optimal time to start to consider your HR needs? Because I think when people think about HR, they just get caught up in the hiring and the firing, and there's so much more to that.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of lean in on that for us, if you would.
Sure. So as far as timing, how do you know when you need an HR person? Of course, when it's time to hire. Of course, if you are legally signing contracts for employees, you need to know which type of employee that they're going to be working for you. Are they going to be a 1099? Are they going to be a W-2? Are you yourself on payroll? So there is some background that you should be prepared to discuss. Sometimes your HR person does work with your accountant, whether that be, just delivering information that you have decided that'll be a part of your structure, meaning what type of employees you'll have, what type of systems you need to have in place, what type of payroll that you'll have. I personally am not a payroll person. I can help you with benefits, hiring, culture, all of that. But the pay people, they have people like you for that and systems for that, right? But all of that is part of your getting started package. As far as like physical date timeline, I would say most people reach out to me in like Q3 or Q4 to prepare for their next year if they do fiscal year by the January date. So I would say usually toward the end of their year, when they really know what they've made and what they can spare for the next year, is when they start to look at getting some services. So once that has been done, of course, we do an intake. I need to know about you. I need to know about the business, your industry, what type of talent it'll take to do the things that you want to do. We'll start to look at what is the going rate, whether that be a salary or hourly cost for the people, or contract, flat rate for people. So you want to look at what the market rate or the target range for those types of positions are. And then we look at your budget. Right. And that's where people usually get scared. They run out the door and then I have to call them. Right. But then after that, we kind of talk about, okay, so once you bring these people on board, what does it look like? Are they now going to be remote? Do you have somewhere for them to work and collaborate? How do you check in on what they're doing? How do you measure their performance? How do you fire them if you need to? How do you discipline them if you need to? So then we put together a handbook for the business. And so that will include not only some do's and don'ts and policies and all of those things. And it really forces the business owner to put these things on paper, right? And actually see what that looks like. So of course you may have a mission statement, what your products are, who your customers are, but you don't know, what are your non-negotiables as far as working with someone. Of course, there's state laws. You have to know what the laws are to know what you can and can't do, with your employees. So that goes in there. And then it gives some formal process also to hiring and building a culture. So once we have done that, of course we do the job descriptions. We start to do some interview training. So I train the business owner on the questions to ask, what to listen for, how to properly evaluate, and then how to move on to like an offer. Right. And then actually get them set up and start to work. And then along the way, now some people stop there. They're like, I just need to get some people in here. And then, I'll come back for some more parts as I grow. But usually, let's say a business owner already has some people, they want to grow. They're looking to, kind of put more into their culture. We can start with like team building exercises. Again, how to measure performance, what kind of trainings you can do. And, just keeping people motivated to want to work for you, especially in this tough time. And then from there, It's essentially, if your organization gets really big, then you have employee relations. What do you do if people don't get along? What do you do if you need to discipline someone? It doesn't go very well. So, then you get into the deeper parts of HR. Can you hear? I can't hear you. You're on mute.
I have muted my mic. Didn't even know.
Yeah.
Isn't there a significant risk to the business owner to take on any employees without having that particular part in place about just the standard of, okay, when, how, and why someone is disciplined, without that being written? Aren't they at exposure legally or something?
Absolutely. So your local Department of Labor or the overall Department of Labor, if the person knows their stuff, or if they want to be an a-hole, or if they're well within their right, and you fire them for a reason that is not, legally right? They can take that, and depending on the size of your business, you can be penalized for that, whether it's fines, whether it's an audit. So there are definitely consequences. So let's say, for example, an employee did something wrong, 5 times, or they're costing you money, etc. So if you don't have certain processes in place, if you don't have a basic job description that says these are your job duties and this is what you're responsible for knowing, and then you say, okay, well, I'm firing you because you didn't do X, Y, and Z. And they can say, well, I didn't know I was supposed to know that, because they don't have a formal document to be able to point back and say that this is what I'm supposed to know. That's one part. The second part is you didn't offer them any training. You didn't offer them any correction before you actually, took the firing route. So if you have that document that says you should know X, Y, and Z, okay, after I made the first mistake, why you didn't retrain me?
Gotcha.
Okay. So then, okay, if I do it the second time, then, okay, you did not give me my written warning, signed warning, whatever. Okay, so I don't have that. You don't have a trail of where you tried to take corrective action to do that. Now, let's say it's something that's not
required.
Huh?
Are those type of steps a requirement on the employer, or does that just vary state to state?
The legal repercussions vary, but as far as what you should have as standard, that's for every single business owner. You should have a disciplinary action plan. You should have some sort of training procedure. You should have a job description. Those are basic things, like I said, that we do in the handbook, right? And let's say you are an at-will employer, which varies state to state. Some states are, some states are not. If that is the case, then you can skip all of that and say, it was at will. The employee also has the same, permissions to quit at will. No reason given, right? So even with that, having the policy that says these are some of the reasons that you could be fired on the spot, they need to know that too, so that they don't make the mistake and do it. Right. So those are just some things that can come up if you don't have those things in place.
So if you're just tuning in, we're talking to serial entrepreneur and HR guru, Alisha Pean. And I think that at this point, if you've been watching since the top of the hour, if we didn't establish anything else, we've established that she's earned her credentials and she is a specialist in the HR space. And I needed to have that happen for you guys, for you to understand, like, this is not one of those 30-day YouTube, Google it, and regurgitate type of things. This is study and execution. Now, let's talk about the other side of you. You are in the fashion space, and right now building or preparing your boutique to open. And I learned something throughout the conversation, was that you've already been in that industry 12 years, which makes the chances that you're going to be successful in the brick and mortar a lot more likely. What made you, because right now, like, a lot of people have gotten into the And if I say this wrong, y'all forgive me, because y'all know I do tax, not tech. But like the Etsy and the Shopify's, and it's like everybody's getting into wanting to have these kind of online boutiques. And from an old school business, frame of mind, I'm thinking, but what do you control? Like, you have no inventory, you don't control deliverables. These things are concerns for me. I don't know how they mitigate those things when you're talking about building a brand and a loyalty or what have you. It's like, hey, you're kind of like, almost, you're like, an independent contractor, if you would. You're not sourcing goods, you're not having your label or whatever. You're like, somebody goes to a site, they order something, I don't know if they ship it or if it's shipped from somewhere else, they get it, they don't like it, or if it takes too long to get it. Like, there's so many uncontrolled things, it would make me uncomfortable. But 12 years ago, we didn't really have all of these things going on. So how did you get your start in that space, and how did you manage to mitigate all the changes with the technological advances and whatnot to stay relevant in that space?
Yes, so that's a very good and long story. I'll try to keep it short. So at the time that I started, I was doing one of those coaching programs. Now, I'm going to say from my mentor, it was actually one of the good ones that was out at that time. And so one of the exercises that we had to do was to take one of our natural talents and turn it into a business. So at that time, I was in school for my psychology degree, and I was working in retail. And at that time, Newark and Company, I don't know if everyone is familiar with Newark and Company, had just branched off and created their own accessory store, like a freestanding accessory store. And so I was able to, when they built the one out at my location, I was able to work in that. And, I got really expressive with accessories, and, I would wear a lot of stuff. And when the women would come in, they would want to be styled. So if you know anything about fashion, styling is different than retailing, right? So it created more relationships. People would come in, they would want to, be styled versus just coming in and shopping. So it created a little bit of a relationship there. And of course, brand loyalty for New York and Company at the time, for those women who were, basically housewives or, elite, to come in and want to get that service. So for me, I was like, well, if I'm already doing that myself for this company, then I should be able to do it for myself. So I started making jewelry. I went and got materials. I started, I had no skill at all. Right. So I think at that time I looked at some YouTubes. I had taken some classes, some jewelry making classes from the local bead ladies, and actually started to put pieces together. And as I got better and better, I started doing custom pieces for special occasions like weddings and, outings and things like that. So just moving along, when Facebook became popular as a marketplace, there was no algorithm. There wasn't all these extra restrictions that you have. You didn't have to create a business page. It was just a free for all, right? So I did do very well at that time because, the exposure was there. It was also around the same couple of years that Basketball Wives had come out. So all of the jewelry that the Basketball Wives were wearing, the girls wanted me to make, right? So it was a really good time at that time. And then once the restrictions kind of came, they wanted you to buy the ads and all of this stuff. So then I had to get more creative about how I marketed. Right. So then that's when I started to work with Berkeley College. I got some young ladies that were also passionate about, fashion merchandising and all of that. So I just got really creative with storytelling and connecting with people online, which is why a lot of times if you follow me, you'll see me, wearing stuff, or, I'll try to do some of the, some of the popular things where they throw things up and, put it on and all of that creative stuff. But that's kind of what keeps you relevant, following some of that stuff. But you do still have to have quality products, a good branding message so that people connect with you and what you're offering. So that's kind of the long story, or the short, long story of how I got started. But yeah, it's been a long journey.
So there's the 9 to 5 as an HR guru, and clearly the styling business is not a side hustle for you, it's a business for you. And I'm curious as to how those two things evolved into partnering into a coffee a cafe.
Yes. So even though it seems like everything does not mesh together for the greater good, it kind of does. So the 9 to 5 is just that, right? So when I do my job and I get up and I have the luxury of working from home. That's been really great the past couple of years, right? So once I am done with that, that goes off, and then I have to switch on to my other hat, right? So doing that allows me the freedom that I don't have to feel like I'm obligated to always be at my computer or be doing stuff for the job if I'm already done with that. I've paid my dues. You know, I know my job and my profession. I have my performance, and I'm good there, right? Now, if I was trying to be the CEO there, then that's different. I'd probably work, you know, just as hard there as I do outside. However, I leave that alone. So when I have to switch to the other stuff, you know, I set my hours according to, you know, the time that I have available. I have a young lady who works with me. She started as an intern. She's now the assistant manager for that location, right? And so she actually went to school and, you know, has a fashion degree in that. So that works out. And then the cafe. So the cafe was born because coffee has been like, I even have a sign that says runs on coffee, right? So coffee has been like my juice, my energy juice throughout my entire journey. School, master's, bachelor's, life, kids, everything, right? So myself, along with my partner, met a few years ago. And we both, you know, are basically professional students. So, right, we always talk about our love for coffee. She not works in Starbucks, but does her work in Starbucks. And it's like, well, why don't we have our own, you know, location where we can offer that same workspace to local students and commuters and people that work from home that maybe want a different environment, offer some specialty coffee, and just kind of, you know, do it with our flavor for the local community. So that's kind of where that came from.
That's awesome. What were some of the challenges in building out that vision?
So it's still actively being built out. So one of the challenges that we had was neither one of us knew how to run a coffee business, right? We know we like coffee. We know what we like it to taste like. But we did not have any background in being a barista, for example. But me, I'm just like, well, we can just hire one, right? So that's always my answer for everything. So, you know, we wanted to make sure that we put a good, solid business plan together. We presented it to, you know, the landlord that, you know, was going to rent us the space out. We stuck to the things that we put in those business plans instead of it just being, you know, pretty concept of what we want to do. Of course, we have to build it out, equipment, plumbing, all of those things. So right now we're in the thick of getting that together and hopefully being open very soon.
That is awesome. Congratulations
Thank you.
On that as well. So you're doing the brick and mortar boutique and you're doing the brick and mortar cafe. And my question is, why were you not afraid when so many brick and mortar businesses are closing due to everything from inability to find talent to just economic conditions, etc.? You're like blasting forward in that space. What stopped you from having any fear in going forward in that?
Because I chose to trust my capability and not fear, one, and two, because I have a different business structure, business model than most of maybe some of the larger companies or even small e-boutiques. I feel like because I have been able to be successful with my smaller studio, that being in a mall space now would, of course, give me some leverage and help me to skyrocket. Now, one of the reasons why I didn't just come up with that out of the thin air. So one of the locations that I'm a part of in New Jersey is a consignment relationship with the sister shop. And so when they opened, they essentially take your products and put them on the shelves as well with, excuse me, along with some other Black-owned women's brands. And so I did that for a year, and I basically was able to test the market out in a large mall to see how my products would do. And so they did very well, which gave me not only the, decision to do it, but also hard numbers to know that if I was to have a store with my own products instead of it being shared with other, brands and whatnot, that I could do these numbers or, somewhere in this range. So that's kind of where it came from as well. Not only that, I got a lot of grants during COVID. I was able to get private grants, state grants, a lot of that to help support that. I think a lot of people missed out on being able to put in for those things that could support their business. A lot of us have hustle, but we need capital. Right. So having, some support with a lot of that also helped as well. So that's what gave me the courage.
About I get the question a lot about grants, and we'll get into that into a second, but I wanted to give that little closed statement on that part. So, ladies and gentlemen, the confidence was in the KPIs, not in the cockiness. Please understand.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, that's I might trademark that, KPI confidence.
That's a good one.
But so then you talked about being able to get grants and whatnot, and I don't think that a single week has passed in the last 10 years where someone hasn't asked me about knowing a grant writer or applying for a grant or what have you. And I think the thing that always is missed is that they want a grant for something that they don't have information on yet. There's no business plan or what have you.
Clutch my invisible pearls.
And some people would say, well, business plans are kind of a thing of the past. But then the other side is, hey, if you're actually in business, having the data to support the grant that you're asking for, it's just good business sense. But you didn't have an accountant, and then you tell me, hey, well, I had QuickBooks, and this is, wait a minute, you have $40,000 of miscellaneous expenses on here and $30,000 of unreceived income. What do we do? Where did this come from? Oh, that's what QuickBooks gave me. No, bad input, bad output. Let's get this together.
You know what it is about business plans? They give a lot of people imposter syndrome, and it lets you know how much you really don't know about your business or about business in general. So when you have to sit down, whether it's a full business plan or a lean business plan, thank God for those, because I hate doing the whole one, right? But the lean ones are a little bit more easy to manage. But when you have to sit down with that information and realize that you don't really know it, then you're like, oh shit. Right? So then naturally, because it's hard, it's a challenge, it'll cause you to either have to do the real research or step up to the plate. People usually put it to the side and they choose to continue to operate the way they always have. And then when those things come up, grants are based on availability. There's time limits to them. They're not going to wait for you to go put that business plan together. You should have stayed ready so that when it came, you was ready.
And I tell people this all the time when it was just the craziest thing. It must have been 2 years prior. It was actually 2 years prior to the pandemic. I don't know what it was in me. I kept telling people. In fact, for those that don't know, the Boss in Boss Talk Radio is actually an acronym. It means Business Operations Success Strategies or Success Show in the media sense. But I urged people to really, kind of have their books together and things like that. And I developed a product suite around it to legitimize their business, get these things in place from payroll to SOPs and all of this kind of stuff. Not like the deep HR stuff, but just the bare minimum of, hey, you need to have this structure, and then be able to record this data so that you can position yourself to receive capital. At the time, I was thinking, just traditional routes of business capital or whatever. But when the pandemic happened, oh, my phone blew up. Everybody wanted to, get a year or two of financials. Like, it's March, right? We're in tax season, so we can do this for you. But it's going to be started in June and it'll take the rest of the year. Now I need it next week so I can apply for this loan. Well, how long have you been in business? Well, I just started. I didn't really do that. Wait a minute. You're not a business. You're just trying to get some money. You call somebody else. You can't do this. Just go away. So, how do you communicate this sense of preparedness, this need for preparedness, to people who really desire to be successful in business? Because the industry doesn't matter. There are certain staples of business that just have to happen.
Right. I think this goes back to the reason why we're having this entire conversation. When you are so busy working in the business that you cannot, work on the important parts of the business. So if you are the cookie maker, for example, and you have a high volume of sales, you're trying to get the cookies to the people, you may not have the time to write out your business plan or really do that administrative work, right? So it still has to get done, for situations like this or just to have in general. So I guess being more effective with your time, going back to that 24 hours that we all have, learning how to be more effective with your time is going to help you be able to manage all of those different things that you need that are basic until you can get to the next level. So again, even if you don't have the capital, let's say, to hire an admin to work for you every week, you can maybe pay someone one time, a fee to go ahead and do that for you, or go ahead and help you at least get the framework of a business plan together. For example, I'm not a grant writer. However, I know my business. And so I was able to answer those questions properly, and give them the information needed for me to even be, in the running for a lot of that stuff. So I think that being properly informed about what you qualify for and what you don't qualify for, and what you can do for when the next time it comes around. That may not be as much as what was available then, but there are so many more grant opportunities, especially for Black-owned businesses, women-owned businesses now, that have kind of been made available to smaller businesses with less structure, right? Because before it was like, okay, it's available to companies of below 100 employees. Well, some of the companies are, maybe franchises are freestanding, so they're very much capable of applying because they have less than 100, but they're a part of a larger organization. So you're still competing with them, right? So you still have to basically have that same dog that you got when you baking them cookies to do your part of your business plan, right? So that's what I would say.
I'm glad you brought up the 24 hours. Because it is my mantra that the thing that separates, the greats from the mediocre is just what you choose to do with your 24. And I'm pretty certain that you've had many a 16-hour day in the road to success. But the narrative today is, you started and tomorrow you're famous, and the day after that you're rich. I don't know where the work ethic went, but that's why we like to have people like yourself on to really talk about the journeys that, contributed to how you got where you are. So you also do consulting for small businesses, and we want people to be able to reach out to you to kind of have those consults about, what they need to put in place and whatnot before they invest money in scaling for sales and fall apart because they pissed off an employee. So how can people reach out to you?
Yes. So if you're interested in even just having a consultation to understand where you are, maybe some things that you need to have before you can actually have that service be a part of your business. You can find me at www.aliciapean.com, and I do 30-minute consultations for free, and I can point you to resources that are also free to get you started before, like I said, you actually need services. So definitely, I'm always, putting stuff up, all kinds of tips and, everything. So if you want to join the email list, you can do that as well on the website. Just starting to get yourself knowledgeable about, what you need, and then bringing that all to the table and asking questions is the first start. So ask me some questions.
Yes, if you have some questions before we go out, or you can post them if you're watching this after the fact on either YouTube or Facebook or on talkbossradio.com. You can post your questions there. Alisha will have access to that link and she can answer some stuff there for you guys. I want to thank you for being on and giving your time in the midst of all these different things you have going on. When can we expect to be able to have some great coffee and do some Christmas shopping?
So I would say for the cafe, we are aiming for May. I'm gonna tell you what happened. So as we're on this podcast, my partner just sent me pictures of our signage, and I'm sitting here trying not to be excited while it came down on the little bar. So we're actively getting that stuff together. So we're shooting for May for the cafe. We want to do all kinds of summer events, networking events, like professional stuff for the community, arts, all of that stuff. And then for the cafe, for the boutique. Our location in Orange is already open. We're stocking spring and summer stuff now. If you are in Delaware, that will be also open in the middle of May. So I have not put a date together, but just, follow me, friend me on Facebook. I'm not inaccessible. Definitely friend me on Facebook, Instagram. You can find the boutique or the cafe. Follow those pages to stay up to date.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on and blessing the audience, not only with that wealth of information on the HR side of things, but also another example of how success is not overnight. The overnight success is usually 10 years. So you're 12 years in and just the fashion side and much further in the HR space, and we want to thank you for giving your time to be here on Boss Talk Radio. Final words for the folks. Anything you wanted to leave everybody with?
Oh, me?
Uh-huh.
Use your network, use your village, use your support system. You cannot do it by yourself. Relationships.
That was and I can attest to that was the single hardest life lesson for me, was the art of relationships. So definitely, not only should you use your relationships, but be relationship worthy. We're not talking about intimate relationships, but don't be the person that just always shows up to receive. Have offer some value, and even that's not a monetary thing. Be able to contribute to the spaces that you're in, so that so when you're in need, people want to contribute to you as well. Did I get that about right?
Absolutely. And there's a handful of books that I definitely would recommend reading to support that as well. But most times all the good information is hidden in the old language books, and some of the new stuff is just kind of trendy and social. But I would say some of the books that helped me with relationships were 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, as well as How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I think that was Dale Carnegie.
Classics. Both classics. I don't think you should file for an LLC before you read those.
This is true.
But yeah, no, those are classics, and I'm glad you mentioned that. See, this is the kind of thing that ends up where we end up going on for hours. But you mentioned the books and the new languages. And it was everything I could do to not post this yesterday, but it was in my spirit. I wanted to tell people, look, a lot of these catchphrases and new thing. If you learn the principles of money and the principles of relationships, all these new catch things won't turn you in a bunch of directions because they're really the same thing, just repackaged. Things like infinite banking and such, these are not new things that just repackaged or whatever, but it's the same principles. So
you know what taught me money, good money, I guess principles, Richest Man in Babylon. That's one of my go-to.
Great one.
Yes, that one is a really, really good one. But again, a lot of them are written in that, old language, or it's rhetoric, or it's sarcastic, or, if you're not able to kind of pour yourself into it, you may miss it and it may seem a little boring. But that's where audiobooks come in. Audiobooks are really, really good if you like to listen to stuff. It gives it a little bit more character.
And the thing about those things too is, some of these books come up all the time on the show, and I want people to know that it's okay to read these books more than once. They are.
I have collector's editions of several of these books. That's how serious it is for me.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that the principles are the same, and like you said, some of it's in sarcasm and such. But hey, get the message. Don't worry about, because I can't name the number of programs that's essentially built off of the Richest Man in Babylon. I don't know. I mean, Profit First. There's so many of them, and I'll tell you another one where people miss the financial principles in it, but they get a lot of other stuff out of it, is The Alchemist. And there's a lot of financial.
That's my Instagram name.
Oh, really?
Yes, Alisha the Alchemist. That's like my number one favorite.
Yeah,
but go ahead.
That one is so. There's so many lessons in that book, but people often miss the financial principles in there as well. So yeah, hope you guys got something out of this. You got some good reading. Again, some of these have come up before, so hey. If 10 people tell you stink, you need to take a bath. Well, at least 10 people will tell you to read the same book on Boss Talk Radio. So if you haven't gone out and gotten these books yet, I suggest that you do. A lot of times you can find them in a half-price bookstore or something like that. And if you're just not into reading, or you want to lie and say you don't have the time, like Alisha said, get the audio ones. I'm not a fan of audio books, but I'll do an audio book before I do an ebook. So get that and get the information, get it inside of you. That many successful people can't be right. So pick up the book and get the information. You've been tuned in to Boss Talk Radio. We look forward to following you, Alisha, and seeing the many great things you do, and having you back on after the cafe is open. We want to get a virtual grand tour. We'll see you guys not on next week, because that is deadline week, but we will have another episode in before May. I'm excited. I've been getting a lot of invitations for speaking. For some reason, people want to hear me talk about taxes and business growth and things of that nature. So
because you give them the sauce. I mean, online you give them the sauce, and that's why I said, the podcast gives us the freedom to speak about those things that people are afraid to say.
That's the crazy part. I was like, my mom even asked me, she was like, do they know how you talk? I was like, yeah.
Right.
They want it. I'll give it to them. So yeah, that's been a great thing, because every time I get an invitation, I'm like, okay, just so you know, I don't put sugar on this.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, yeah, no, we watched the show and you keep it real. Okay, just all right, here's the contract. So I'm looking forward to that. And it's actually this year will be an expansion on some national organizations. I'll be speaking at the IRS Forum. I'll be speaking at National Association of Enrolled Agents, Texas Society of Enrolled Agents, and a couple of other ones. So while we may not have as many back-to-back episodes coming, just know that your boy is busy And you guys are going to benefit from a lot of this because some of it I'm going to test out on the show in advance anyway. So I guess this will be about 2 weeks. We'll see you guys back here. Also look for me on David Williams' podcast. I think he sent some questions over to me today. And we'll be making that announcement sometime soon. And also, last but not least, I have a special announcement coming for you guys. Stay tuned for that. A new podcast is coming this summer. And this one will not be business related, and it will be completely uncut. So stay tuned for Free as Fuck. We'll talk to you later.
Boss Talk Radio, keeping it real, yeah, that's for sure. I said a Boss Talk Radio, here for your needs, we'll crack the code. He the boss, ooh, he the boss, ooh, yeah. He the boss, he's the boss, he the boss, he the boss.